All right, welcome back. So with the conclusion of our first iteration of the new DPC season, I thought it'd be kind of interesting to go over some of the changes that I'd like to see for the next one because of course, because it was the first version of this new DPC format, there were obviously a few little hiccups. Although there were some hiccups though, there was a lot of great things coming out of this new format. For example, just a new and brighter light being shone in the Tier 2 and Tier 3 Dota scene, as well as funding behind it, making it so more teams and more players have more access to that Dota 2 prize pool than ever before, which is fantastic. It just means that there's going to be new life breathed into this game, which overall is fantastic, and again, is a huge benefit of the new format. However, I do think that there were some problems on the top end of that because of course it was a great thing for the lower end teams, but for the higher end teams and for just the biggest tournaments of the year, I think there were a few problems with the way that a few of the things went down. First thing on my list is the point distribution. This is something that I had touched on numerous times throughout the past month and a half of me making videos regularly, especially when I was going through my preview series. Where we had a lot of teams that were qualifying that had done very well in their own regions, but didn't really find any success in their actual majors that they qualified for. I think that there was too much emphasis put on finishing highly in your own region as opposed to finishing highly in majors. Keep in mind that if you won first place in your region, you won the same amount of points as if you were to finish first place in a major. And doing the latter is much more difficult than the first, especially since finishing first place in your region is played across a month-and-a-half long season where you're only playing about 1 to 2 series a week. In the comfort of your own team house or boot camp or anything like that. Whereas in a major, you're playing against the best teams in the whole world at that moment, and you're playing a whole bunch of series within the span of about a week and a half. So huge difference there. I still think that there should be some emphasis, obviously, on winning first place in your region. I definitely don't think that should be overlooked. However, I don't think the weight of that should be nearly as much as winning or finishing top 6 in a major. For starters, looking at the old system now, so if you finish first place in your region, like I said, you got 500 DPC points. Second place got 300, so pretty big gap there between first and second place, despite the fact that first and second place can be decided simply just off of one series, if not even one game. They could have been separated by just a single series, and in that series they played against each other and went to a best of 3, where that third game was what ultimately decided who came first and second place. And having 200 DPC points separating that was a little high in my opinion. Third place got 200 DPC points, fourth place 100, and fifth place, which no team from any region would have qualified to the major in fifth place, got 50 points. I still think that's pretty good. I don't think having 50 points for any team that's not going to be qualifying for the major is necessarily terrible. And for majors, the old format, if you won, you got 500 DPC points. So again, it's the same thing as regional. Second place got 450, third place 400, fourth place 350, fifth and sixth place got 300, and seventh and eighth place got 200. So seventh and eighth place, notably, you only had to win one series. Whether you were starting in the lower bracket or in the upper bracket, you just had to win one series on the main event to get yourself 200 DPC points. So I think that was also a highlight there, because winning a series is, even though it's just one series, is still a pretty big deal because you're playing against the best teams in that period of time around the world. So some changes I'd like to see, again, like I mentioned, less emphasis on your own regional ranking. So I put the first place in your own region at 300 points, and then I separated every placement after that by 50 points each. I don't think there should be a separation as huge as 200 points between each finishing, because again, these seasons are quite long and they're not separated by very many games. So I don't think the stakes should be nearly as high in this one. So I have this one ranking from 300 down to 150 from first to fourth place, and then fifth place, you still get 50 points as you did the season before. For the majors, however, I've increased the amount of points you receive as opposed to with the regionals, where I've downgraded them a little bit. So if you finish first place at the major, I think 600 points would be do it well. Again, this is just a rough estimation. It doesn't have to be these numbers exactly. I just think that if you finish first place in a major, you should get probably at least double the amount that if you got first place in your own region. I'm not trying to say that any region is like easy to win or anything like that. It's a much more difficult to win a major. And then from there, a decrease of 50 points all the way down to fourth place. And then once you're out of the top 4, it's 350 points for top 6, and then 250 points for top 8. And then, because I'm going to be getting to my new format that I'd like to see for the majors, that doesn't include a wildcard stage and a group stage, for 9th and 12th place, you get 100 points. So if you just win a single series, or if you just attend the major at all, you get 100 points, depending on which format you get. If there ends up only being 12 teams on the main stage, like there were previous events, maybe you don't have this final 100 points there. But if you end up having 16 teams playing on the main event, similar to a TI format, I think having it, so if you win a single series, you get 100 DPC points, that wouldn't be so bad. So yeah, again, just a lot more emphasis on points at majors as opposed to regionals. Next up, looking at the actual major format now. So this was another huge problem that I think the DPC had. This was the second of the two biggest problems in my eyes, and I think in a lot of other people's eyes, was just the way that the tournament worked, where if you finish first place in your region, you got automatically to upper bracket, which on paper sounds really good, right? You finish first place in your region, you automatically have an advantage of starting in the upper bracket, where you have the ability to lose a series and not quite be out of the tournament yet. Well, the problem with that is the lowest of the low teams coming in from the biggest regions, for example, China and Western Europe, who had 4 slots, the bottom 2 teams from those regions, as well as the bottom team from CIS, or Eastern Europe, and Southeast Asia, were put into a wildcard stage, where 4 of them would be eliminated out of the 6. The top 2 move on to the group stage, and then they would play in a group stage against all of the second place teams from every region, and then from there, 2 more teams are eliminated. The top 2 make it to the upper bracket, and the rest make up the lower bracket. This would mean that some teams, if you started in the wildcard stage, made it through the group stage, and then made it to the upper bracket or to the lower bracket, you have already played about 30 games before the main stage has even started, and some teams that started in the upper bracket haven't even played a single one yet. So your team has had the chance to develop and practice the new meta against some of the best teams in the world, while other teams haven't even had that chance to compete yet. So it just made it so that a lot of upper bracket teams really had a hard time starting, and they would just end up losing their first series and then getting knocked out immediately. Teams that come to mind are Alliance and Virtus.Pro, teams that again did very well in their own regions but struggled notably when it came to majors. Alliance didn't win a single series in either major that they played in. However, they still qualified for TI based on points, which I think was a huge problem, especially since they still did not do very well at TI. Virtus.Pro is a different story. Obviously, Virtus.Pro very much came into their own. They also did do pretty well though in one of the majors. They finished top 8 in the first major. So I think Virtus.Pro would have qualified even with this new system, as opposed to Alliance, who I don't think probably would have, unless they were going in through their regional qualifier slot. So what new format would I like to see? Well, I'd like to see us go back to our old major format, which was pretty much exactly like the TI format that we use now, where we have group stages. The old majors that we used to have back in like 2015, 2016 only had 16 teams. So we'd have 4 groups of 4 that would decide our upper bracket and lower bracket. However, now just based on the slots that we give to every region, we have 18 teams. So we can have a similar group stage to TI, where we have 2 groups of 9, where the bottom team of each group is eliminated, the top 4 make upper bracket, and the rest make the lower bracket, and the first round of the lower bracket is best of 1s. That way it doesn't take too much time, and we're able to get the tournament rolling, and if you win a single series, you would get yourself 100 DPC points right there. So I personally think that would be a better system. If having that extra round of lower bracket is still too long, then I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to just maybe make it so that the bottom 3 teams of every group are eliminated. That way there's only 12 teams going to the main stage, just like how it was going previously this year, but we'll have to see. And yeah, so I don't see why we don't have it back to the old TI format that's worked so well for so many years. I don't know why we had the wild card stage and then the group stage and then the main event. It just really didn't make all that much sense. To me, it just was ridiculous that a team that had already played like 30 games, like Team Nigma, was heading into the upper bracket of the Animajor, playing against a team that hadn't even played at all. So it was just kind of weird. And again, all 30 of those games are played in the span of just under a week, whereas they only play about 20 games throughout their entire DPC season across a month and a half. It just really was weirdly paced, in my opinion. It just didn't really make all that much sense. And the last thing that I'd like to see change, and this is more of a luxury thing that I'm not entirely sure is going to happen, but I really wish it did, is just the overall funding across the board, upper bracket, upper division and lower division in the majors and in the seasons and stuff, just every region just getting an increase in pay, because it's kind of really low pay. If you're in the upper division and you finish in the middle of the pack, you get about $25,000, which isn't terrible, but for a team that's doing quite well in their own region, in the upper division of the region, that's not a whole lot of money. Not only that, but every season, including the major, Valve is only spending $2.18 million across every single region for one season, like I said, and that's including the major. Whereas before, when we had our quarterly majors, like the Frankfurt major, the Shanghai major, those had prize pools of $3 million just for the major tournament. So we're not even obtaining $3 million nowadays in a season that spreads out across numerous months and numerous regions, which I think is ridiculous considering how much bigger the game is now, especially from a viewer's perspective and just as a player's perspective. So I think it's pretty ridiculous. I would really like to see a doubling of that, make it so that it's $4 million per season. That way it's an increase of what we used to have 5-6 years ago, and we have more funding going into the tier 2 and tier 3 scene, as well as the tier 1 scene too. So yeah, these are just some changes I'd like to see heading into this new DPC season. I'm hoping that we see at least 2 of these, at least these 2. I would really hate to head into a new season with the same major format or the same point distribution format. The funding I can get behind just because I'm not a player, so I'm not directly affected by it. I just want to see a change in these 2 here so that we have more accurate representations of which teams are actually doing well, getting the most amount of DPC points. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. As always, how do you think they should change the new DPC season? Do you think they should change it at all? Let me know in the comments down below as always, and I will see you guys. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.